Good morning. Nearing the end of our look at Hebrew poetry outside the book of Psalms. Today we are on day 189 and we are looking at that prayer which we find in Jonah chapter 2 verses 1 to 10. Jonah praying from the belly of the great fish. From right inside the fish, Jonah prayed to Yahweh his God. Yahweh, I was deeply distressed. I called on you, and you answered. I was there deep in the world of the dead. There I cried for your help, and you answered me. Yes, it was you that cast me down into the very depths, down to the seabed, submerged in the waters, the waves rolling high over me. I thought you had banished me from your presence. I thought I'd never see your temple again. When the water went right over me, I choked. I got tangled up with the seaweed around my head, and down I went to the roots of the mountains, to the land whose gates lock fast forever. Yahweh, my God, you brought me out of the depths, alive. I had felt my life slipping away, and it was then that I prayed, and in your holy temple you heard me. People who worship ineffective idols have abandoned any loyalty they once had to you. As for me, I will praise you and offer you a sacrifice. I will do everything I have promised, for safety comes from Yahweh. At that point, Yahweh told the fish to throw Jonah up on the beach, and it complied. When we first met Jonah back on day 41, when I unveiled this parable about a bolshy, racist prophet who had to be taught a severe lesson before he finally agreed to do what God wanted, and even when he succeeded, he appeared not to have shed his prejudices and was pretty annoyed that God was willing to love and forgive the repentant foreigners to whom he had been sent, who had once been Israel's enemies. This poem is pretty obviously an independent composition, written in a psalm-like mode that has been added to the story to embellish it. It is the prayer of a desperate person drowning, who, about to lose consciousness, gasps out a hopeless final request to God, is surprisingly saved, and in response promises to behave better in the future. If it had failed to find a place here, we might never have benefited from its beautifully written lines. In its original composition, it was actually a prayer of thanksgiving for having escaped from a near-death experience, written as more of an encouragement to its readers not to regard any situation they find themselves in as an irreversible disaster. There is always hope. It was not originally written with Jonah in mind. It would not have been physically possible to recite it in the belly of a fish or on the seabed. And in such panicky circumstances, who would have had the leisure to recall it and repeat it mentally? But it fits well enough into the story of Jonah. It expresses an acknowledgement that the near-death experience was deserved. Yes, it was you that cast me down into the very depths, down to the seabed, submerged in the waters, the waves rolling high over me. And it also speaks of the writer's resolution not to defy God's orders again. I will praise you and offer you a sacrifice. I will do all that I have promised, for safety comes from Yahweh. Near-death experiences often change people radically, making them more mindful of God and grateful for what life they have left, and often leaving them much more willing to be at the service of others out of gratitude for their newfound salvation. Tomorrow, we briefly visit the prophet Micah, who quoted the same poem that Isaiah used back on day 186. And we shall see how Micah uses it to put his own spin on the events of his troubled times. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.